Hi folks, and welcome back to Fishing with Den. This time I'm going to be showing you some basic techniques to catch carp in the summer on the pole. So I'm fishing my local pond again today, and I happen to know it's about 3 or 4 feet deep, and I've already plumbed the depth, and I've found that where I'm fishing it's probably 3.5 feet deep or so, as you can see from the rig. And I've decided that because the bottom in this place kind of goes straight down at the edge for a couple of feet, then it sort of goes flat and then gradually slides off. There are no shelves, there are no particular features, so I'm not quite sure of how far out to fish today. As I say, I've got no real features to fish to, like a shelf or something like that. So what I've done, I've plumbed the depth at 11 meters and at about 8 meters in front of me, and that's where I'm going to fish. I've set up 2 rigs. The first one, as was the case when I showed you the last video on how to set up, it's got the 14 hook, the 8-inch hook length, which is about 5 pounds breaking strain, hook length is about 6 pounds, strung out shotting pattern, and a float. Now this float is about 0.4 of a gram. So the next thing you're going to ask me is, well, how do you know what size of a float to use when you're fishing in a lake? Because a lot depends on things like how deep it is, how windy it is, and all sorts of other issues. So the easiest way to explain this to you is if you use 0.1 of a gram of weight of shot per foot of depth. So this one happens to be 4 feet, so I've used 0.4 of a gram, and that is a number 6 shot. Now what that means is, of course, that if the water was to be something like 10 feet deep, you'd be using a float which is about a gram in weight. Now obviously we're just fishing at 4 feet deep, so shotting patterns, I've just strung out the shot. If you're fishing deeper, you'd bring them further down, bulk them together, and then just have a couple of dropper shots nearer the bottom. Unless of course you wanted to catch on the drop. But now we're getting complicated, and here I was saying that we're going to have a basic sort of a techniques tuition session. So let's crack on with the basic technique, shall we? Okay. Well, as I said, I've already plumbed up the depth here, but what I'm going to do, just to show you, is I'm going to put the plummet back on, like so, and I'll ship the pole out. I'm going to ship this out to the full length of 11 meters, which I'm going to be fishing to today. Make sure you've got the joint aligners lined up if you have them on your pole. If you don't worry about it. Ship out gently, and then just hold the pole over your knee like so. Drop it down, and as you can see, I'm fishing about 1 inch over depth. In other words, the hook's on the bottom and there's about a slack piece of 1 inch line there. If I come back to the, oh sorry, I should have mentioned I'm looking at that power pole over there as my marker, and that's where I'll be fishing to all the time. It is a fraction shallower there, as you see, so if I do come into that, I'll probably have to shallow up a little bit. I will also be doing a rig for down in the edge here at some point, but I'll probably leave that till a little bit later. You don't always want to have all of the swims on the go at the same time. So, having got the depth, I'm going to hook up down here, and then the best way to do this is to mark it. So if you do lose any parts of the rig, you can set it back up again and be back and fishing very quickly. This is Tipex or correction fluid or liquid paper. There we go. Just a little mark where the float is, so I know where to go back to. And also, if I come into the shallower area, I can just take 2 or 3 inches off and come back to that. Very simple and effective way of marking things up. Now, having done that, I'm going to use my pole pot, and I'm going to put just a pinch of bait in, a pinch of corn, put it back on, and ship out. You need to be careful when you do this, because if you get it too bouncy, the whole thing will jump up and down and you'll lose your bait. It just literally, it's like a trampoline, it comes shooting out, and that's no good to anyone. especially as you get to the longer lengths. As you see, I'm taking it very easily as we go, pointing at that power pole. Just tip it gently in, and I'll also feed the other swim, but I'll take off those two sections before I do that. As you see, I can ship all the way back. Again, a few pieces of pellet, a few bits of corn, and ship out. Again, the second swim is in line with that power pole, so all I need to do is to get to the end of this pole and just drop it in. Now, because I'm feeling my way in today, I'm not going to put vast amounts of bait in. I'm just going to keep doing that every few minutes. Okay, let's get started, shall we? I'm going to put a single piece of sweet corn on the hook, as you see, and then I'm just going to start off on the inside line, or the 8-meter line, because obviously if I catch any fish on there, it's easier to fish at that sort of distance. As you see, I put the pole between my legs onto the pole bar, and there we are. Float sitting nicely, and now let's just wait and see if we get a bite. That was pretty instantaneous. I was still setting up the other camera, and the pole pulled round. Didn't even see the bite. I'd like to say I was good, but sometimes I'm just lucky. Not a big fish. See the elastic coming out. Because it's not too big, I don't need to use the puller bung at the bottom. Just take your time. And there we go. Fish number one within a couple of minutes of casting in. Well, shipping out rather. Lovely little conditioned fish. Beautiful. Let's go back out. So when you're fishing fairly close in, you do have some options on feeding. You could obviously feed with the pole pot, but that means having to bring this rig in, ship out with the pole pot, and put the bait in, then come back and ship out again. Now, there's another way of doing it, of course, which is to just simply grab some bait and just underarm it in if you want to. An alternative, if you're in the UK or Europe or America, you can just use a catapult and get some bait out that way. It's not quite as accurate as with a pole cup, but it does get the area nice and neatly bracketed. The other option, which is what I'm going to do now, is I'm going to use a pole pot which is actually affixed to the top of the pole. So let's bring this in and show you. So this is the pole pot I'm talking about, a lot smaller than the other one. If I just grab my rig a second, let's get it out of the way. What happens is you squeeze the bottom, clip it on like that, a little bit back from the top, otherwise you get tangles. Take some bait, just like before, a few pellets in, a few bits of corn, and again you just ship out in the same way as we did with the pole pot. But of course this time we've got the rig attached as well, so you've got to be even more careful. And this will take just a little bit of practice to get right. So, here we go. Now it's fine when you're at 8 meters. At 11 meters it's even more difficult, but it only takes a little bit of practice to get this sorted out. Ship out, look for your pole, drop in. The pole pot can stay on the top. It's fine unless it's really, really windy. When it catches the wind, and then it's just not much fun at all. But you can see how accurate it is to feed this way. Now, because I've got two swims going, one at 11 meters and one at 8 meters, this one seems to be producing, so I'm going to keep fishing this one for a little bit, and then I'll look at fishing the further out one as and when things slow down on this one. Now they may slow down straight away. Sometimes you only get 1 or 2 fish and then you have to alternate between the two. But sometimes you can pretty much fish the same swim for a couple of hours before you have any issues and need to move out. There we go. Just ship it back onto the pole roller. This one's a little goldfish, or very much like a crucian carp if you're in the UK. And because the fish have started to move a little bit, I'm going to try putting in some bait almost every time. So just drop that in down there for a moment. Grab some bait, put it in. Just be careful, obviously, if you put it down in front of you, don't snag up on any reeds or bits of grass or anything like that. And ship out. There we go. Float in. And we're ready for the next one. Now sometimes, if you aren't getting a bite, what you can do is just lift... Oh, there we go, we got one. I'll show you that in a minute, shall we? Whoa, dear, oh dear, this is a bit bigger. Okay, try and keep them away from the swim you've been feeding, because you don't want to spook all the others. It's easy to do with a pole. Just keep him right down there out of the way. And then just start to ship back. Get your pole on the rollers. As you see, everything's to hand, and so you can just grab it as you need to. Slightly bigger fish, not massive. Just take your time. There we go. So back out again. A little bit of feed, not very much at all, just a pinch. Bit of corn, bit of pellet. And don't get caught up on the reeds like I told you. Do as I say, not as I do. And ship back out. Okay. Same as before. And off we go, ready for the next one. And there we go again. Quite small fish today. A bit below the average size, but very welcome nevertheless. Never lift them out even if they are this small. You're quite likely to drop them off. As you've just seen, the hook's just pulled out. So just while we're in, just show you something I've just done. You'll notice that the wind's got up, and because the wind's got up, you have the possibility for the line between the float and the pole tip to be on the surface. And that can create drag, and that pulls the float out of position, and that means you don't get bites. So what I've done is I put a number 6 shot. This happens to be a Stotz, which is like a cylinder, a bit less than halfway towards the float. And what that does, it sinks the line down for me. If I hadn't got that on, I would have had to put the pole underwater and maybe just drag it along. But with the pole cup on, that just makes it difficult. So that's just a little tip if you want to sink the line between float and pole tip.